Hello learners, welcome to your favorite e-learning platform Pathshala. I am Savita Chauhan, your mathematics mentor. Let's just start with the very first chapter of class 10th, and that is nothing but the real numbers. So let's just start with the classification of numbers. We know that the very first kind of numbers under the classification of numbers is nothing but called as the natural numbers, which are also called as naturally existing numbers, or we can also call them as the counting numbers. So the collection of the numbers that starts from 1, 2, 3, 4, so goes on. Such kind of a collection is nothing but called as a collection of natural numbers. When a number 0 gets added up with this particular collection, the collection is called as nothing but a collection of whole numbers. So a collection in which the elements are like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and so goes on is nothing but called as a collection of whole numbers. Now let's just talk about the positive as well as the negative number. So let us suppose we are having a collection in which there are the positive numbers, the negative numbers and the 0 within. Such a collection is nothing but called as a collection of integers. So a collection in which we have positive as well as negative as well as 0 kind of numbers, such are called as integers. Now let's just move on further towards another representation of numbers which can be written in the formation of P by Q, and such a representation is nothing but called as the rational numbers. So P by Q formation in which P is an integer, Q is an integer, with a condition that denominator cannot be is equal to 0, such a representation is nothing but called as the rational number. So actually we already have done the rational numbers in the class 8 and the number system in the class 9. So from both these chapters we do know one thing, that every natural number, every whole number, every integer can be called as a rational number, because we know that the natural numbers, the whole numbers or the integers can be represented in the formation of P by Q. So all these numbers can be called as the rational numbers. Now let's just move on further towards another representation of the number, that is nothing but fractions. What is the meaning of a fraction? So we say whenever we have any P by Q formation in which P and Q can be a whole number or can be a natural number with a condition that denominator cannot be 0, is nothing but a fraction. So fractions can actually be converted into 2 decimal representations. What are those 2 decimal representations? The first one is nothing but called as the terminating decimals. Fractions can be converted into the first formation, that is nothing but terminating decimals, and the other kind of representation is non-terminating decimals. So fractions can be converted into the terminating decimals and into the non-terminating decimals. So what are these? What are these terminating and non-terminating? So let us suppose I'll take an example. Let us suppose I'm talking about 1 by 2. It is nothing but a fraction. Obviously we are aware what is the definition of a fraction. So 1 by 2 is a fraction. Now let's just convert 1 by 2 into the decimals. So 1 by 2, as we know, can be converted as 0.5. It can be written as 0.5, and let us suppose I'm taking another example and I am having, let us suppose 5 by 10. 5 by 10. 5 by 10 is again equivalent to 1 by 2 as well, we know that, and 5 by 2 again can be written as 0.5. Let us suppose I am having 1 by 100, so it can be written as 0.01. So all these formations are actually terminating one, in which all of them do have a remainder as 0. All of them do have a remainder as 0. So such kind of a fractions in which the remainder is nothing but is equal to 0, such kind of fractions when converted into such expressions, these are called as the terminating decimals, because they are terminating, they are ending up at a particular point. The answer is only 0.5. There is no repetition, there is nothing at all. So it is actually terminating at all. So this is 0.5. It can be called as a terminating decimal, and 0.5 again and 0.01 again. So always remember what is the meaning of the terminating decimal. The terminating decimal means whenever the remainder is equal to 0, and whenever we do have any particular fraction and after dividing that particular fraction we are getting a remainder as 0, such a type of expression which is of this form, either of this form, they are called as the terminating decimal. We do talk about the repeating and the non-repeating one, but let us suppose now we are only talking about the decimal and the non-terminating decimal. We will discuss about the repeating and the non-repeating in the further slide. So the next one is the non-terminating decimal. What is the meaning of non-terminating decimal? Whenever the remainder is non-zero, whenever the remainder is non-zero in any particular fraction, then such kind of the expressions are called as the non-terminating decimal. So let us suppose I'm talking about 1 by 3. I'm talking about 1 by 3. So if I'll talk about 1 by 3, it will be like 0.3333 and so goes on. It is not terminating at all at any particular point. It is again repeating and repeating. The answer is 0.333333 without any termination, and we are always getting the remainder as 1. So such kind of an expression, or we can say this particular representation, is nothing but called as a non-terminating decimal, because it is not terminating at all. So we always use a bar for such kind of a number. So let us suppose I'm talking about this, or let us suppose I'm talking about 10 by 3. We know 10 by 3 is nothing but 3.33333 and so goes on. Again, the remainder for such kind of a fraction is nothing but 1. So it can be represented as 3.3 bar. So such a decimal expression is called as a non-terminating decimal. I hope both of these definitions are clear to you, that the fractions can be converted into a terminating decimal and a non-terminating decimal. A terminating decimal is the one in which the remainder is equal to 0, and a non-terminating decimal is the one in which the remainder is non-zero. So this is all about converting the fractions into the terminating decimals and into the non-terminating decimals.